Hi, you are not broken, you are rising. Welcome to Rise Up and Heal, the podcast that helps you reclaim your worth, rewrite your story, and heal forward. I'm Annie, and welcome to today's episode because today I am talking with the beautiful Jillene, who is a pastor with Grace Lutheran all the way over in Minnesota. Jillene, thank you so much for being on the Rise Up and Heal podcast today. I'm so incredibly grateful that I have this opportunity to speak with you. So, welcome. And when you're ready, can you please share your story?
Yeah. Thank you so very much, Annie, for having me. It's truly an honor to be able to share my story in hopes of offering healing and connection for people in their grief journey. So my story started when I was 14. My mom died by suicide. And it was the late 80s. And so people did not talk about struggle. They didn't talk about death. They didn't talk about grief. They certainly didn't talk about suicide being completed by a woman. And so I found myself as a 14-year-old feeling very isolated.
Mm.
Um, I understand now, that my family, my dad and my siblings were trying to find their own ways of support and healing, but it was just so devastating for all of us that, again, I didn't feel connected with my family. I didn't feel connected with my peers. Um, but I did find connection in my church, my home congregation. It was there that they asked how I was. And when I would share, they truly took time to listen. And it wasn't judgment and it wasn't condescending, Oh, yeah, that isn't always helpful for people, but they were okay with however I showed up. Some days were okay and almost normal, and other days I was really questioning and wondering, but they were just fantastic. And my home congregation pastor was just so um, gracious as well. And I think he set that tone. He had such a big heart and was so accepting. And I think that we all just saw that and modeled it. And I know that I struggled with, I was very angry in addition to
Yeah.
being sad. And I remember one time he asked me to talk about that anger and I said he asked if I was mad at God. And I
Wow.
said,
Okay.
no. Yeah,
No,
like
no.
yeah. And he asked me about that. I said, well, God is God. You can't be mad at God. And he said, well, what if you told God you were mad at him? And so that began for me this very real one, of not necessarily for me blaming God, but being able to talk to a higher power. For me, that's God. For others, it might be somebody else. But I think to have that freedom and that curiosity of there's there's more than just what we can see and touch and understand here. Um, but some of these people around me, this pastor, this congregation, they're okay in encouraging me to show up exactly how I am and not have it all figured out and to ask questions and to push and grow. So that was very formidable for me. And I um, did talk with a counselor when I was 14 after mom died. But there was just so much more inside of me. The talking modality, I'm grateful that works really well for some people, but
Yeah.
it just that wasn't for me. So fast forward, went to college, and while in college, I was searching for the community, that connection that I had experienced in my congregation, and I couldn't find it. So I thought maybe I'll be a pastor. And I will try to cultivate that openness, that caring, that searching, that wondering for people in community in the name of God, you know? So then I became a pastor when I was
That is so,
22.
wow, 22.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And I,
Well, I started to study to be a pastor when I was 22. I should clarify.
okay.
Yeah.
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 Wow. But I think that's so important with what you were saying that, with going to the church where you felt that you were valued and that you were
Mm-hmm.
being seen and that you were being heard. And I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? Is finding that community, that sacred space where you can just really be able to be surrounded by really loving, caring, supportive people who are really going to sort of help you on your journey. And especially, like you said, I mean, you were so young and being a teenage girl, and of course, you're going through all the teenage stuff with trying to find
Right.
yourself, the hormones and all that sort of stuff, to have lost your
Right.
mum. So, how wonderful that you were able to step into that community and really feel that everything that you expressed was just so valid for you at that
Yes.
particular point in time.
Yes. Absolutely.
Mm.
So then fast forward a number of years, and I think I spent a lot of my life creating this community for people, encouraging people to be real in their own lives and their faith, especially their questions and their wonderings. Um, but always in the back of my head, I wondered why my mom chose to die. And I think I lived a lot of my life almost an opposite of her. Um, what I mean by that is I went to college and I pursued education and I traveled as much as I could and I worked really hard on my marriage and I'm so grateful to have been married to the same person and that wasn't my mom's story, you know. We had two amazing children and I devoted so much of my time and energy to nurturing them and encouraging them and being there for them. Uh, Probably almost to a fault of being a helicopter mom. When my mother said I tried to be opposite, and I'm so grateful now that I have conversations with my kids, and they're like, "Yes, we see where you're coming from," and yeah, and as I said, I tried all of these things, but I never felt like I really had a solid answer as to why. And so then when I became the age that my mom was when she died, and my kids became the age that I was when she died, it there are studies that there can be hiccups while those two significant ages aligned just in sync, and I had a breakdown.
Yeah.
And it was so scary because as I felt like more and more was unraveling as I was getting closer to her age, the more and more I just steeled up. You know, I was so tight and that anger was back. Um, and it was just so scary to all of a sudden feel like I was at this point of breaking. And yet it was a humbling opportunity to surrender, to say, I can't figure this out. And so at that time, um, I had been preparing for a marathon. And just before the marathon, yeah, I did. I pushed myself in so many ways, physically, emotionally, just go, 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 go. And just before the marathon, I really hurt my leg. And I went to the doctor and they said, you shouldn't run. And I I can't run. Right? And that's, just,
Oh,
the doctor said, you are going to be in so much pain. And the physical pain that was happening in my leg was nothing compared to the turmoil I was inside. I just had to keep running, keep going, going, going. So I ran the marathon. I was
Oh my God. Oh, oh, poor thing.
after that, though, that's when again the breakdown started to happen. And somebody said, try yoga because you still are very physical. And I remember as I got involved with yoga, at first I really thought this is ridiculous. You lay around and you do all of this. There's so much more. It's really connecting with your breath
Yeah,
and your thoughts to quiet them down. And the poses invite you to get into them. So you have to think about that rather than all the things.
yeah,
And when I was quiet and on my mat, that's when I started to release and hear all of this pain and all of this anger. And it was in yoga that it really started to shift. And that's when I
wow.
felt this incredible gift of healing.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So, fast forward a little bit more, just a few years ago, 2022, I had completed my certification as a yoga instructor. That was kind of one of my projects during COVID. I like to know how things work. So I had some time during COVID and started studying it and completed the certification, like I said, at the end of 2022. And what was super curious is the congregation I'm currently serving um, really promotes mental health. May is mental health awareness, and green is the color for that. And so I wear a lot of green in May to encourage people to take care of their mental health, partly because I know that people struggle. My mom's
Yeah,
own story of struggle and not having a place to go and feel connected and heard and seen. So our congregation said, "Oh, yoga might be a way that we could support people in their mental health. Wouldn't it be neat if we brought in a teacher?" And I didn't show them that I was almost done with my certification. So, again, fast forward, I said I could teach this. But what was so delightful is some people in the congregation were not okay with it. They said,
oh,
yoga does not belong in a church. And so we had a real eye-opening dialogue about tell me more. What does this feel like? What does this look like? And it's true. Yoga does have its roots in Eastern traditions, but by the time yoga came to the West, it was more on par with exercise. It stuck around because of the value of the breath work and the centering and the quieting and the physical, combining mind, body, breath. It's just this wonderful
yeah.
healing, nurturing gift. So um, we offered it at our church, and my first class ever had 57 people. First class I had ever taught.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that is awesome.
People were curious about yoga in a church,
Wow.
and yes. So my husband was such an amazing supporter because he could tell I was just, and he said, it's just you and me in our living room. We're just doing this. Um, so I had begun to offer that at the congregation that I serve. And soon into that, I discovered grief yoga. And
Wow.
so, similar to regular yoga, using mind, body, breath, grief yoga uses that, but it also invites us to connect with our own sound. And here's what
Okay.
I mean. Like if you're gonna pick up a heavy box or move the couch, sometimes you figure out, okay, how am I safely gonna move this? So you're using your mind, you get in there to move your body, and then when you kind of push or pick up, you might let out a little. And
Yeah.
that's that other piece with grief yoga.
Yeah.
Grief yoga or grief can have us feeling stuck or like there's something heavy in our way. So when we use our breath and our body and our sound, it can help us connect with our grief, with
Yeah.
connecting with thoughts or feelings that we haven't for a while, to be curious about them and then move forward in our own healing journey.
Yeah, and that, it's so important, isn't it? And I think this is the thing too, like, especially when you were saying, like, going to run the marathon and you still did it. You warrior woman with your leg in pain. My goodness. But because the body keeps the score. And sometimes
Yes.
when we really feel like, even though we've sort of healed, there are always going to be, I guess, layers upon layers upon layers that all of a sudden something happens and it just breaks us open even
Yes.
more. And at the
Mhm.
time when you are being broken, I guess, broken open, it can feel so daunting and
Yes.
so overwhelming and really quite scary, really quite dark. But it really is pushing yourself through and finding that support. And I mean, how wonderful that you found yoga to really help sort of crack you right open to
Mhm.
now put you where you are today. So, like, that's incredible. And here you are, you're now teaching yoga, like, as part of your congregation. So, which is absolutely fantastic. What an amazing gift.
Thank you. Yes. And our congregation really appreciates it, I think, as a resource to the community. So in addition to teaching all levels yoga and occasionally grief yoga, people will kind of reach out, say, "Can we have a grief yoga session?" Or I'll offer it occasionally in the community, or just different ways. But usually it's when I have a few people who would like to try it, and then there's usually a couple sessions offered because it's a different concept. Well, if you're not used to yoga in general, that takes a little bit of feeling comfortable with that. And then grief yoga, again, just offers those bigger movements. So, again, that just whole new experience, allowing people to, as you said, connect with their own story, their own body that has been keeping the score, and to know how to connect with that and then move it forward. So, what I have recognized as well as the grief yoga is I also became certified as a grief, loss, and end of life coach because
Wow.
sometimes people have these feelings that come up, but then aren't sure how to move forward. So, as a
Yeah.
coach, listening to somebody and of where they're at and where they want to go, that grief and loss coach can help support them, as it bubbles up physically, but then moving it forward kind of verbally.
Yeah.
And for some people, they start with the grief and loss coaching. They're saying they articulate, I feel stuck and want to move forward. So as a coach, we journey together. But then all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, something is really bubbling up physically. So then
Yeah.
offering that resource of grief yoga. So that's the grounded love for grief and loss of grief coaching and grief yoga.
That is so beautiful. And you're right, because everything just works together like hand in
Mhm.
hand. And how beautiful that you are out there advocating for the mental health and helping people, not just with their emotions and not just the mental side of stuff, but also helping them release it within the realms of yoga. Because it really is. I mean, we are so interconnected in everything that we do. And like I said earlier, like, our body really does keep the score. And it's so important that when you are feeling so angry and when you're feeling frustrated and when you're feeling all of that, that you have basically an outlet that you can go and you can do these things to release it, because it's so important.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
I've been able to continue on my own journey, I continue to learn more about, um, yeah, those thoughts and feelings that are so down in there. But again, not being um, overwhelmed by them. To just say, yes, I have more work to do on my own healing journey, and so what can I do to support myself? And um, yeah, it just is. It's amazing to continue to grow in my own healing and to support other people in theirs as well.
It is, it really is. It's so fulfilling. And that's why I love doing what I do, because I think you just said it so perfectly, is that you're healing at the same time. Like things still come up because, you know,
Mhm.
life really is a journey. And
Mhm.
it's so important that when those things do come up, it's like, okay, this has come up for a reason. What is it trying to teach me? What do I need to know about this? And the greatest gift of all is really learning to know who you are as a person and what your strengths are, what you feel that you potentially need to work through. And yeah, and I love that too. I love that because it's our own healing process with things that are coming up, but at the same token, we get to really help others with, I guess, understanding and knowing what it's like to have experienced such adversity, and just really understanding those emotions that really need to be worked through.
Yeah, it's so scary at first. Like
Yeah.
I talked about it, I felt so alone and I didn't know where to go. And
Yeah.
so I'm so grateful that you are doing the work that you do and
Thank you.
inviting others to share their stories too, because helping people to understand your journey is your own, but you don't have to walk it alone.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You're definitely not alone. And that's why it's so important for people to be able to reach out. So, how can people contact you? Like, if they want to reach out to you, because I know you're in the Minnesota area, like, how can they find you? Do you have a website? Like, are you going to be offering
Yes.
yoga online? Because I know we were talking about that earlier.
Yes. Yes. So, my life shifts in May. So now in June, that's my project. I know I was talking about in the summer. So sure. So now in June, I hope very, very soon to be able to provide yoga, all levels yoga and grief yoga online through my website. And so it's www.groundedloveforgrief.com. And I'm on socials of Grounded Love for Grief. Um, or Jillene Gallatin, either place. So I also am available for grief and loss and end of life coaching on Zoom or Teams, some other video
Yep.
platforms, however to support people. But yes, that'll be the next big project that I'm very excited about and closer. So
Yes, I'm so excited that you're going to be doing that. So I I want to know as soon as you're doing the grief yoga and the classes that you're doing, so I can absolutely share that. And I also want to be, a participant in that. So I'm so incredibly excited for you that you are going to do this. And absolutely, I love the work that you do and how you are such a beautiful advocate in helping others and just helping them find their way. But you're still on your, like you said, on your journey and on your pathway, and it's leading you to different things. So, no, that's wonderful.
mhm.
And I will also add in, for everybody who's listening, Jillene's link details, so you can reach out and contact you as well, so they can do that. So, Jillene, thank you so much. It has just been so wonderful having you on the podcast today, sharing your story and just really talking about the things that you do.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Annie. It's been just an honor to share my story and to get to know you and offer connection for your listeners. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.